Hi, this is Christopher Allen. I'm the product manager for ZebraZapps, and I'll be leading you through this short summary on Webinar 1 for the Getting Started on ZebraZapps webinar series. We'll be doing just a few things today in this summary, but I'll be going pretty fast. So what I'd like you to do is pull out your Learner's Guide document, watch the video here, and feel free to stop and start this video and spend some time playing around with your ZebraZapps project, and then continue on in the video when it's right for you. We of course are doing this in conjunction with the full webinar series, where you can come and join us and build along for an hour or so and ask as many questions as you like. So let's get started today. Here's just a brief overview of what we'll be looking at. We'll be creating our first project. I'll be giving you a tour of the ZebraZapps interface. We'll look at how a project might be put together, as well as where to find all the different tools and objects in ZebraZapps. And we'll spend some time putting text on the screen and bringing in assets from our own computer and putting them inside of our project. All right, let's get started. Well, the first step, of course, is to log into your ZebraZapps account. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. If you've already logged in before, you of course can associate your account with Facebook, and that'll log you in anytime you like. Otherwise, go ahead and put in your display name or email address here in the upper left with your password. And it will take you to your home screen. You of course have the opportunity to upload more information about yourself, especially if you're going to be collaborating with other people at work. It's nice to have a home screen here that advertises who you are and the projects that you're currently working on. Over on the left, we've got a list of really handy shortcuts. The last few projects that I've been working on, any projects that others might have sent to me, as well as published projects. Then just with one click I can access any of these. Today, however, and for most of you, we're going to be creating our very first project. So I'd like to call your attention over here to this big green button, of course, that says Create New Project, and it couldn't be simpler than that. It's going to launch a new window. Make sure that you've got your pop-up blocker turned off on your browser, otherwise the editor won't open for you. The first screen here has a bit of information on it. We don't need to really cover all of it, but just so that you know, over here on the right, we've got a bunch of design templates for you to choose from, as well as we've given you controls here so that you can change the size and shape of your project. The first thing that I would like you to do, though, is to title your project. It could be, Webinar 1, and maybe your initials, just so that if you would like to share it with the instructor, we've got a little bit of a tag about who you are. We'll go ahead and just leave everything else as it was and say Create Project. Immediately we're dumped into what we call Event Flow View, and this is a bird's eye view of your entire project. On the left hand side, you'll notice there's a big rectangle here, and it says Master A. We'll get into a little bit more about what master pages are later on. And over here we've got Event 1. Events can be as simple as a slide with just a couple bullet points on it, or it can be as complex as a full simulation. The choice of how big or small each individual event is up to you. To start editing or placing things on the screen, there are two ways to start editing an event or a master from Event Flow View. You can choose to click here the Edit This Event icon. Here it's the little pencil at the top, or simply double click in the middle of the thumbnail. Now that we're in event number 1, we have access to our toolbox here, and I'd like to go over what some of the basic tools are, how they function, and we'll start placing a few objects on the screen. The toolbox, if it's not showing for you, of course you can hide it at any time and bring it back simply by choosing this pointer icon here over on the left. And of course, if you hover over each one of these icons, it'll tell you what it is with a helpful tooltip. So from our toolbox, we'll be focusing just here across the top for the next couple of webinars. But here are the tools that are most important for navigating and selecting things within the project. Over on the left, this is our default icon. Call this the pointer. And of course, this allows you to select and choose just like any other software program that you're comfortable with. The hand tool allows you to move the project around so that you can see more of the screen. And of course, the magnifying tool will allow you to select and zoom in on your project. You can also use command keys. Hitting spacebar will return you back to the pointer. So if I had chosen the hand and moved my project around, just by hitting the spacebar, that will return me back to the pointer. To zoom, you can also use this pop-up menu here down at the bottom. You can also use the plus and minus key on your keyboard. So here I'm hitting the plus key and the minus key to zoom in and out. The toolbox highlights to let you know which tool you have selected, and there are two different types of highlights. The objects across the top, the pointer, the magnifying tool, and the hand tool, those allow you to select the tool once and move around the screen and continue to click and drag. So I'm clicking and moving, clicking and moving. The rest of the tools across the bottom, so if I was to say select the text tool, you notice that it highlights with just a green outline. And that green outline lets you know that if you click and drag, so I've clicked and dragged, that I'm only going to get one text object and it's going to immediately revert back to the pointer. So the outline is simply letting me know that I've got one object here that I'm going to create, and that's this text object. So I'm going to click down with my mouse and slide over here to the right, and you'll see that I've created my first text object. And this would be a great time for you to now select the text object from the toolbar and make a text object and go ahead and put some text in it. You can immediately start typing. Now that we have text inside of our text object, I'd like to show you the different ways that you can format your text object to make it look as pretty as you can. So with my text object selected, so if I click off and click on, you'll notice over here on the right a whole bunch of different properties or attributes for the text object. And if I double click just to select a little bit of text, you notice there are only a few options for me to choose from. And really what's going on here is when I just have the text object selected, here's everything that I can do to the full object. So I can change its location. If I wanted to, I could go in here and say, you know, I really need this to be at 200 pixels over to the right. Or I might say something like, you know, I really wish all of my text was aligned to the right instead of to the left. The inspector is a really quick way for you to make all of these large global changes to this particular object. If you go ahead and double click and maybe just select a little bit of text, like our title here of our company, I can change just the font size. I could even change the font type if I like, change its color, and make all of these changes essentially what we call inline formatting in this particular text object. If I select off and then select again, here I can make changes to the whole object. So I could bring everything else up if I hadn't made those inline changes. Again, I can change the color. But there are many things that are missing when I'm doing inline changes because there are only a few things that I can do just to these words. So take a moment to experiment with double clicking and selecting text. You could try making it bold, try making it italic, changing the font type if you'd like, and maybe make another text object and experiment just a little bit more with some new text, selecting off, selecting on, and going and making some global changes to the entire object and see how those two things differ. Okay, I hope you've spent some time playing around with the text object and how inline formatting works as well as global formatting for your text object. What I'd like to do is clean up my stage here and start putting in the actual text that we're going to use in our project. There's a bunch of ways that you can delete objects from the screen or you can repurpose what you've got. I'll go over a couple of them here pretty quick. Of course, you can do a marquee select and just hit the delete key on your keyboard. That'll remove everything. If you didn't want that to happen, of course, you can go up to the edit menu here at the top, and it's even going to tell you what it's going to undo. Here it's going to undo the deletion of 2 objects, and of course it's going to bring them right back. You'll also notice that there are shortcut keys. All of these keys don't require using a command key or an option key unless it says so. So here in the case of undo, it's just the letter Z. So if I were have to selected everything and just hit the delete key, if I want to bring those back, the only key that I have to hit on the keyboard is Z. And of course that also works for copy and paste. So if I wanted more of these text objects, just hitting the letter C is going to copy an object. Hitting the letter V is going to paste an object. And at any time, of course, you can come up here and take a look at what the command keys are. So I'm going to go ahead and delete everything. I'm going to grab a new text object, kind of place this in the upper left-hand corner, and actually style here my text object the way I need for my project. So go ahead and type in Technicom cell phones, and we'd like all of this text to be 48 point. So with just my text object selected, I'm going to go over here to the font size, and there are a couple of different ways that you can do it. I like to use the slider. It gives me a quick visual representation of what's happening. Otherwise, you can go in here and just simply type 42, and it's going to size just like so. And if you need, of course, your project to be a little bit wider, or your text object to be a little bit wider, just clicking and dragging on the handles will get that wrapping to now go to a single line. All right, I'd like to call your attention now to some of the save features that ZebraZapps has. Down in the lower left-hand corner, you'll notice some controls for autosave. And every few minutes, Zebra is going to save your project for you. And we save a complete history for you, and we'll show you at a later time how to go in and retrieve a version of your project from the past. We also give you a little bit of an indication of whether or not a save or a change has been recorded. So if I make a few adjustments here to the screen, you notice that my project lets me know that I do have unsaved changes. And if I want to make sure to capture those, there are several ways that I can do that. I can rely on autosave. I can go up to my project message center here in the top left and choose save. And that also has a command key. And it's really quite easy. All you have to do is click off someplace on the screen. We're here to make a few changes. And simply hit the S key. It'll kick off a new save. Now I'd like to call your attention to something very important inside Zebra, and we call them message centers. Every time you put an object on the screen, especially from your toolbox over here, you get what's called a message center. And it contains all of the properties, essentially everything that the computer knows about this particular object is inside the message center. And it's this black box here that's usually right at the bottom of the object that you've created. It has 3 buttons, and I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit so that we can see the message center better. It has 3 buttons: ins, properties, and outs. Properties are everything that describes this object to the computer, and it's listed here in categories. So if you go ahead and grab your message center and click on properties, you'll see that all of these categories are now displayed, from visibility to geometry to appearance. Inside each one of these categories, they open up, I'll show you how to do that, are a whole bunch of properties, and for the most part, I'm betting that you know what's inside of them. So if we were to take a look at font, of course we've been playing around with this one quite a bit. Here's its font name, and you can go ahead and change that to something else if you'd like. You can change it to bold. All of those different properties are listed inside the message center. Feels a lot like the inspector. But in fact, the message center has more properties listed inside of it than the inspector does here over on the right. It's essentially a complete manifest of what this object is. And one of the things that I really like about the Message Center here and the way that it's laid out is I don't have to memorize what things are called. You can simply just open up your Message Center. You can kind of poke around here for what category is, the property that you're looking for going to be listed under, and make a few changes. And none of these are really listed in a computer programmer type of way. This is real English, and that makes it really easy to find what it is that you'd like to change. I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit. The other two buttons here across the top, outs and ins, these contain all of the actions and behaviors that you're going to need in order to make any object an interactive object. And that's what we're going to be covering in Webinar 2. But what I'd like you to do is take a moment here to open up the properties on your text object, and you might take a look at things like effects. Here are a few things that you might not see over in your inspector on the right. And of course you can add a drop shadow if you'd like to your object. You can even change the color of your drop shadow. So take a moment, open up the Message Center, and poke around and take a look at all the different properties here that are listed. All right, I hope you've had some time to play around with the Message Center and take a look at what each one of the categories contains. I'm going to zoom out here on my project just a little bit, and now I'd like to use a couple of the other objects. So maybe I'll make my text here one line and move it out of the way. So from our toolbox here, I just want to call your attention to a few of these other objects across the top. So we can, of course, create a line by choosing the line tool, clicking and holding down with my mouse and dragging across the screen while I can create a line. And of course, I'm continuing to hold my mouse button down. If I hold Shift on the keyboard down, it'll snap to 45-degree increments, and it helps make some nice angled lines. So let's go ahead and make a couple lines, put those on the screen. And you can do this next step either in the Message Center or in the inspector here on the right. We could zoom in here a little bit so we can see it. But of course, we can change some pretty neat things here on our line. We can add endpoints. So we can add an arrow to one of the ends. We can give it a color if we'd like. And simply to use the color picker and make any of these choices, I click inside the color box here, and just by dragging my mouse button over this color chip and clicking, I get to choose that color. So I'd invite you to do that a couple of times. So there's our line tool. We can of course also make rectangles. These default to have a gradient fill, and this time I'm going to choose it from the inspector just for variety. And of course I can change the orientation of my gradient. I can change the color of each of the ends if I'd like. And I can of course add more color chips if I want. So that's pretty fun. And of course you can change it from a linear gradient to a radial gradient just by choosing either of these buttons here down at the bottom and selecting OK. We have a polygon tool. When you select the polygon tool for the first time, it's going to tell you how many different sides it's going to give you. And if you wanted to make a triangle, of course, simply typing 3 and then return is going to give you a preview of what the triangle would look like. And we can go up to 8 different sides, click and drag, and place that object on the screen. It has a fill color and a fill opacity. Opacity, of course, is how transparent the object is, so you can bring this down here to 46% or something like that just by using the slider. And as you bring it over different objects, you can see that we've got some fill color, but we're also able to see the objects that are there behind it. That's fill opacity, and of course we have line weight and line opacity. We also have opacity for the entire object, so you can bring everything down just like so. And then the final thing that I'd like to show you, here we'll create an oval on the screen. Of course, we're not making a very pretty screen, and that's fine. We just want to put a few objects on and see how they work. I'll put my oval here on. We'll choose its fill color. There's also a drop-down menu that allows you to choose from a solid color to a gradient to something that we call Jelly Bean. And Jelly Bean gives you this kind of white extra piece here at the top, a little translucent piece, and it's to give it that look of kind of like a three-dimensional button. And of course here you can change the colors if you'd like to something a bit more interesting. So take a moment or two, use the line tool, which is this guy. Try putting some endpoints on. Great for making graphs and diagrams. Use the rectangle, the oval, as well as spend some time with the polygon tool. And of course, to change the number of sides, once you have the tool selected, choose the number of sides that you'd like. You can hit enter here just so that you can see what that looks like, and then you can click and drag. Okay, just as a quick reminder, now that we've placed a few lovely objects on the screen, and I'm sure everybody has made something that looks as beautiful as my screen, of course the save feature here is under the project menu. You can of course hit the S key or continue to rely on autosave. I'll go ahead and save my project quick. And the next step here is to start importing assets, because of course having some of these design features like the rectangle and the oval and making these jelly bean fills is great to put some character on the screen. We often want to pull in graphic assets from either our media department or something that we've clipped from the web. To import assets, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. The first way that I always like to show is under the project drop-down menu, import asset. And so we'll just go ahead and choose this, and this gives us an opportunity to jump out to our own desktop, and we can go down and find the media assets that we might need for this particular project. And let's just bring in a few. Here we can bring in some of these images down here at the bottom. The selector might work differently on your operating system, but you could go ahead and choose the background, and we might bring in some of these images. We don't need to bring them in all at this very moment. So I'm going to go ahead and hit open, and you notice down here at the bottom that it's letting us know that it's importing assets. Here it's let me know that the assets have already been imported. To find them, we need to go to the resource library, and that's this icon here over on the left. It looks like a rectangle and a circle and a triangle, and that opens up a drawer here that allows us to access all of those assets. If I want to import more and I've got this drawer open, I can simply just hit the plus button, and it's just the same as before, and I can choose any one of these images that I'd like, or a bunch of them just by hitting the shift key on my keyboard and going ahead and open. And here we get to see those all drop in. I'm going to delete just a couple things from my screen. Let's kind of clean it up here a little bit. And let's bring in one of these images. Now, this is an awfully big image, and maybe I want to resize it a little bit. With my object selected, I'm going to get my inspector to open up yet again. And you can either grab the handles here, any one of these that you'd like, and just start clicking and dragging, or you might choose to use the zoom feature first. So here I can just use my zoom slider to bring things up and down. Sometimes if I know that all of my assets are going to be too big by some sort of magnitude, I might just come in here and say, I want all of my images to just be 60%. Okay, so now we can move this around the screen, of course, and I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit. Might be hard to see on your screen, but every time you drop an object on the screen like this, you get a rotation handle. We also have rotation degrees listed as a property. So I could go in here and I could just say, you know, I want it to be skewed a little bit, so we'll go 15 degrees. Maybe I wanted it to be rotated the other way, -15. Or of course I can grab the handle and spin it around. Every now and then that handle might get hidden by the message center. Of course you can move your message centers out of the way. And just like the line tool and our snapping by holding the shift key, if I hold the shift key here while I'm rotating, I can snap it to a 45-degree angle. Okay, I'm going to zoom out here on my project just a little bit. Let's bring in maybe 2 more images here. So I'll bring in this lady with her phone and the student with his phone. And I'm just going to layer them in a really uncomfortable pattern so that I can show you how our arrange menu works and how you can bring different objects front to back. So with one of these objects selected, here I'll choose the one that's on top. And of course the last object that you put on the screen is always going to be on the top. With the student selected, I'm going to go up to the Arrange drop-down menu, and these top ones here at the top allow me to send this object all the way to the back, which is Send to Back. That's a Shift B, or just send one layer back, that's B, or bring things to the front, or bring things forward, or bring things all the way to the front. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to select the student, and I'm going to, just on my keyboard here, click B, and click B again, and click F, and F again, or I can go ahead and hit Shift B all the way to the back, Shift F all the way to the front. And of course you can do that with this object as well, and we could use the Arrange menu, just say bring this one all the way to the front. I'm going to move these guys around a little bit. Well, that brings us to the end of all the topics that we covered in Webinar 1. I hope you found this summary pretty valuable. Please feel free to replay it, stop it, and start it to find some of the things that you might have missed, or just to see a review of the things that you discovered in Webinar 1. Thanks very much.